Welcome to Thorn's Jungle. Take a step in. Have a look around. There's weird things eating each other and lurking and just being weird. Anyway, I'm looking forward to today's episode because, as you know, I love my primates. And what's better than a gigantic monkey? And that's what we're going to be talking about today, the Dinopithecus. But before we get into it, let's just get all the plugs out of the way. If you're listening from any form of podcast app or platform, don't forget to rate and subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel, like, turn the notifications on, comment, all that jazz. It really helps the podcast. And of course, if you're looking for Thorn's Jungle merch, head over to biothorn.com.au and pick yourself up a cool Thorn's Jungle shirt. I should have actually been wearing one now, but it looks like I'm wearing a shirt under this wife beater because I'm that bloody hairy. Anyway, let's get into it. So, Dinopithecus literally translates to terrible ape. Dino, terrible. Pithecus, ape. Dinosaurs, you've obviously all heard that word before. Dino meaning terrible, saurus or sora meaning lizard. So dinosaur means terrible lizard. Dinopithecus means terrible ape. Now, although it wasn't an ape, that's just what they called them back then when they were naming them back in the 20s or 30s or whatever. But Dinopithecus was a very close relative to modern day baboons. So to get an image in your head of what Dinopithecus looked like, just picture a giant baboon. Now, a lot of people think baboons are terrifying enough. Imagine one that was maybe over double the size of the largest baboons that exist. And we're going to get into the size of Dinopithecus a bit later because I did all sorts of modeling and calculations to try figure out just how big the Dinopithecus was. Because there's no real decent height estimates on the Dinopithecus. We have the weight, but the height is a different story. But I think I figured it out, and I'm going to get into that in a little bit. But I'm just going to give you a little bit of background on Dinopithecus. It lived between the Pliocene and Pleistocene epochs. So the Pliocene was like 5 million years ago to maybe 2.5 million years ago, roughly. And the Pleistocene, actually only ended about 11,000 years ago. So Dinopithecus absolutely lived alongside hominins, so ancestors of humans, things like Homo erectus and other archaic hominins like that. But if it died out closer to the Pleistocene epoch, sort of late Pleistocene epoch, that means it absolutely lived alongside modern Homo sapiens, modern humans. And there's no evidence in the fossil record that Dinopithecus and modern humans interacted with each other, but that's because they haven't found anything apart from Dinopithecus skulls, and they haven't actually found many of them. So Dinopithecus lived in Ethiopia and South Africa. We knew humans were living there around that time, and looking at modern day baboons and how humans interact with them, I couldn't see a scenario where this gigantic monkey didn't interact with humans or vice versa. We know baboons are very, very smart animals, and whether they're stealing things from humans or just robbing them of possessions, we know that happens, and we know that happens a lot in modern time. So I would say it's pretty plausible that humans and Dinopithecus did interact with each other in some way. Probably negative, knowing the size of this baboon relative. Whether it hunted humans or took the occasional toddler, or whether or not humans hunted Dinopithecus. We don't know, but I suspect at least one of those scenarios probably did happen, or maybe both. We know chimpanzees occasionally will steal babies off human women's backs and eat them. So we're looking at a monkey that is probably a little bit more tenacious than a chimpanzee and roughly about the same size. So it absolutely could, but we just don't know whether or not it did. Now, there are a lot of estimates in size for the Dinopithecus. Pretty much the most common description of Dinopithecus is it being double the size of a baboon. But baboons, out of all the 6 species of baboons, they do vary in size. The largest being the Shukma baboon, and sort of a close second is the olive baboon. Now, Shukma baboons get pretty big, like 45 kilos, the males, and olive baboons not too far off. So they are a big monkey in themselves. Now, double that would put the Dinopithecus at, 90 kilograms? Which is a little higher than what the scientists estimate. Now, I'm going to go by what is published in actual scientific and academic papers, because there's so many opinions out there on the size of Dinopithecus, and there isn't too many published studies on this animal, which is surprising. And they've only found a handful of skulls, and they haven't found any other bones. If they'd found, femur, tibia, bones like that, then they could get a decent estimate on the size of the Dinopithecus, but they just don't have that. They've only got the skulls. So I guess they're going by skull measurements, and that's how they're estimating the weight of Dinopithecus. Now, I was doing a lot of research into this, and there are forums with people estimating the size, and there's a lot of confusion. Okay, looking at the scientific papers, let's just take their word for it, because these are the scientists that have done the most amount of work on the Dinopithecus. And if they put the upper estimates at 77 kilograms, I'm going to believe it. That is the most academic estimation that we have. So let's go by that, okay? The upper estimate's at 77 kilograms. That's a big bloody monkey. That's 170 pounds? That is a huge monkey. That's bigger than any existing monkeys. The heaviest monkey we have now is the mandrill. And to be honest, the Shukma baboon, its size and weight actually competes with the size of the mandrill. I just think on average, the mandrill can get slightly heavier. But that's about it. They're very, very close in size. The mandrill isn't actually a baboon, by the way. It is a close relative, mind you. Same as the Dinopithecus. If you Google the height of the Dinopithecus, there's a lot of crap out there. And there's a lot of confusion, because we can have a fair estimate that Dinopithecus walked as a quadruped, like modern day baboons. So a lot of the height gets confused from the shoulder height of Dinopithecus. So when it's on all fours, measuring the height of its shoulders, like you do with a dog or a big cat or something like that. And then there's the standing height on its hind legs. So standing upright bipedally. And this is kind of the one I'm interested in, because it kind of makes it a little bit more terrifying knowing the height of an animal in the context of the standing height of a human. Okay, you can say, oh, it's, 2 foot at the shoulder, 3 foot at the shoulder. It's like, yeah, that's pretty small, but then on its hind legs, it's like 7 foot. That makes it much more intimidating. And humans can relate to that height better, because that's how humans are measured. We're measured as a bipedal animal on 2 legs. So that's kind of what we're going to look at now. So I was doing all sorts of calculations to try figure this out. And given the fact that Dinopithecus was twice the size of modern day baboons, a Shukma baboon, male, can stand at about 1.5 meters tall on its back legs. That's about 4'9". Okay? So if we were to double that, we would get a height of 9'8", about 300 centimeters. That's 3 meters tall. That's an animal that, standing on its hind legs, could look at you through a double-story house window. Now, this is ridiculous. A 3 meter tall monkey is insane. If that was a 170 pound monkey that was nearly 10 foot tall, it would be like a stick. It would be so skinny, it would blow away in a strong wind. So that's just, straight off the bat, we can chuck that out. Also, we know that if you had an animal like a saltwater crocodile, a 5 meter long saltwater crocodile would be about half the weight of a 6 meter saltwater crocodile. So that 1 meter in difference can double the weight of saltwater crocodiles, just 3 feet of difference. So if we look at it like that height versus weight with the baboons, and not just doubling everything. Yes, we can double the weight because that is an accurate estimation, scientifically peer-reviewed and published. But we can use this to try and figure out the standing height of Dinopithecus. So the way I did it was, if we look at a male Shukma baboon and the Dinopithecus. Dinopithecus is roughly double the size of the average male Shukma baboon. Okay? Looking at that and throwing out the, just doubling the height in general, we can look at Shukma baboons, males versus the females. Because female Shukma baboons are about half the weight of the male Shukma baboons. Okay, so we're going to use this as a model to look at Dinopithecus's height. Okay? So the female Shukma baboon is about half the weight of the male, right? On all fours, standing quadrupedally, the male Shukma baboon, even though it's double the weight of the female, the male Shukma baboon on all fours will stand about 15 centimeters taller at the shoulder. Okay, so that's about 6 inches taller at the shoulder than the female Shukma baboon, even though it's double the weight of the female. So using that modeling and taking it over to the Dinopithecus, okay, so those differences in weight and height, and let's model that and use that formula on the Dinopithecus using the male Shukma baboon and Dinopithecus, okay, because Dinopithecus is about double the weight of the male Shukma baboon. So using the height differences between the female and the male Shukma baboon, there's about a 25% difference in height on all fours. And with Shukma baboons, or most baboons, if not all of them, their standing shoulder height, so when they're on all fours, compared to their height standing on their hind legs, is literally almost bang on double. So when it's on all fours, the male Shukma baboon is about 75 centimeters at the shoulder. When it's standing upright on its hind legs, it's about 150 centimeters, standing bipedally like a human. That makes it a lot easier. That makes it very easy to figure out. So if we look at the male Shukma baboon, standing on all fours at 75 centimeters at the shoulder, and adding 25%, like we did with the male Shukma baboon, to the female Shukma baboon, standing on all fours, we get about a 93, 94 centimeter tall animal at the shoulder. That is a good estimation of what Dinopithecus stood at its shoulder. So on all fours, we're talking about a monkey that's nearly a meter tall just standing on its all fours. Now, using the same formula as we did with modern day baboons, that their standing on all fours height, their shoulder height, is about half of its standing height on its hind legs. So we basically double that 93, 94 centimeter height, and we get, drum roll, a bipedal, so standing on two legs, height of the Dinopithecus at 187.5 centimeters tall. So that's 6'1" and a bit. So 6'1.5" for the Dinopithecus. That is a big monkey. That's nearly the size of me. Now, baboons, we know how strong they are, even for their size. Could you imagine a 6'1", 170-pound baboon of lean, pure muscle? That is a scary animal. And I mean, the canine teeth alone would be immense. Modern day baboons have canine teeth that are longer than a lion's. Could you imagine what the Dinopithecus's canine teeth are like? That is a formidable monkey. And I feel sorry for any of our ancestors or any modern day humans or hominins that came in contact with a monkey that size. That is bad news no matter what situation you're in. Like, that is insane. And you kind of understand why it gets the name Terrible Ape, because, yeah, if you're a human living back in those times, there's nothing positive about living alongside a baboon that's built like a bloody football player and with canine teeth far, far longer than any lion. Like, Jesus Christ. So that's how I figured out its height. It seems pretty plausible to me. It may sound confusing and things like that, so I hope I explained it alright. But I'm pretty sure I'm the only one that's used that formula and that modeling to estimate the height of Dinopithecus. I have seen around the place a few people estimating its height at about 6 foot, which would make sense, but I think they've underestimated the height. And also, here's another thing to take into account. They've only discovered a handful of skulls from Dinopithecus, okay? I think it's only maybe 5 or 6, maybe, could be less. But think about it this way. What is the likelihood of them discovering the largest individual of that animal? Right? There could have been millions that existed of Dinopithecus, and out of the 5 or 6 skulls that they found, what are the odds of those ones being the largest of the Dinopithecus that existed? Think about it. If humans went extinct, I know there's a lot more humans than there would have been Dinopithecus, but this is just, just shooting the breeze here. If humans went extinct and let's say, a million years' time, they start digging up human bones, what's the likelihood out of 6 skeletons or skulls they find, one of them is going to be Shaquille O'Neal's? Pretty unlikely, right? So the likelihood that those handful of skulls that they've excavated are examples of the largest individuals of Dinopithecus that existed is pretty low, very, very low. And they're just starting to figure this out with T-Rex because of the specimens they've found. They estimate that most of the specimens of Tyrannosaurus Rex that they found still had some growing to do, and they've estimated that T-Rex could be about 15% to 25% bigger than what they've estimated the maximum size of the T-Rex. So if we think about that with Dinopithecus, it could have been a lot bigger, which is a lot more terrifying, but really, really cool. Okay, so that is my Dinopithecus episode. I hope you enjoyed it. There was maths involved with that, and I am terrible at maths, so if you want to double check it, might be a good idea, but I think I did alright. I think I did okay. And also, we have a South Africa safari coming up. It's going to be awesome. I think this is my 7th time to South Africa doing these safaris with groups of people. This one's going to be different because, yes, it's going to be a wicked safari. We're going to do pretty much everything we do on our normal ones, which is awesome alone. But we're also going to be getting hands-on with some of these iconic African animals. So like we're going to go out and assist in tranquilizing and attaching tracking collars to lions. So we're going to help with that. We're going to help attach a tracking collar to a lion. How cool is that? You're going to be able to touch a wild lion. Now, this helps in conservation and research. We're also going to be tranquilizing a rhino and trimming its horn, because when you take their horns off humanely, that stops poachers killing the rhino and chainsawing its face off to get that horn. It's pretty much the only thing that is saving rhinoceros from extinction. And we're going to be snorkeling with sharks. We're going to be helping out at a crocodile park, like moving crocs and stuff like that. So it's going to be awesome. There's going to be really cool hands-on stuff mixed with like chilling out, having a good time, sitting on vehicles, doing game drives, things like that. It's like the best of both worlds. So we've still got a few spots left, and you probably want to get in quick because they do sell out. If you've ever wanted to come and hang out with Rob and me, stars of Kings of Pain, 2 seasons, but also see Africa and do things that most people don't get a chance to do, then don't wait on this, because this is going to be the only one we do, the only conservation trip we do in South Africa where we actually get hands on. So if you've ever thought about it and humming and hurrying, I'll do the next one, there's not going to be a next one. So this is the one. Hit me up, go to my Instagram, DM me, or email me at adam@biothorn.com.au and secure your spot. Don't wait around on this. It's coming in the end of October. So you still got a few months, but get your spot booked now, because we have to stop taking bookings the closer we get. So get onto it, guys. It's going to be awesome. I'll see you next time on another episode of Thorn's Jungle, and I'm pretty sure the next one is going to be another Ultimate Animal Quiz episode with my brother Scott, so do not miss out on that. I'll see you next time. Take care.